What you know, alibis. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's still Wednesday, July 23rd. And I told you guys on the last episode that when these documents from the Moscow Police Department started rolling out, we would do some episodes and go through those. I do want to warn you before we jump in. This is very graphic. It describes what officers who first responded to the scene found. And it is worse than I ever could have imagined, but it's also part of this horrific story. So this is your trigger warning to click off if you are sensitive to things like this, because it is not pleasant. We're going to go through Officer Nunez's report first. He was the first officer on scene. And by the way, he was only 22 years old at the time. It says on November 13th, 2022, at approximately 11:56, I responded to an unconscious subject at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Upon my arrival, I found a large gathering of people in the parking lot immediately north of the 1122 King Road residence. 1122 King Road is a white, 3-story single-family residence with multiple bedrooms. The 1122 designation is located directly above the front door facing north. I was directed to a bedroom on the second floor, it's redacted, in the northwest corner to locate the unresponsive female. Upon entering the room, I observed a female lying supine on the floor next to a bed. According to a roommate, this female was likely Kaylee. The roommate also lived at 1122 King Road. I observed dried blood surrounding Kaylee's body and signs of cutting trauma to her face. Kaylee was covered in so much blood, I wasn't able to immediately discern where any additional injuries would have likely been. Kaylee was apparently deceased due to her pale skin color, rigid body tone, and apparent blood loss. On the bed in the same room, I observed a male lying supine on the bed. According to the roommate, the male was likely Ethan Chapin. The roommate said Ethan was commonly at the residence. I observed blood covering portions of Ethan's legs, surrounding his body into the bed sheets, and drops of blood on the wall near Ethan's head. As I backed out of this room, Redacted showed me a kitchen knife and said he had it in his possession. I told him to leave the knife and go back down the stairs to the front entrance. Officer Warner and I moved to visually clear the residence for any suspects or additional victims. On the third floor, Officer Warner and I found 2 additional, apparently deceased females, both laying supine in a bed. This bedroom was on the southwest corner of the 3rd floor. According to the roommate, these 2 females were likely Xana and Madison. One female showed an apparent traumatic injury to her face due to the basic facial structure being unrecognizable. Both females showed very pale skin. Both females were covered in dry blood and apparently deceased. After the residence was deemed safe, Officer Warner and I exited the residence to secure it and the immediate area, to include the parking lot immediately to the north of the residence. I walked outside and began interviewing the roommate. She told me at approximately 4 a.m. she heard a voice scream and believed it to be Kaylee's. She said she heard Kaylee scream and announced there was somebody inside the residence. She said she could hear Kaylee run from the 3rd floor down the stairs to the 2nd floor into the northwest bedroom. The roommate said she locked herself in the bedroom and continued to hear a commotion. She said eventually she stopped hearing a struggle and heard a male voice say, "You're gonna be fine. I'm gonna help you." The roommate did not recognize the male's voice. She said after a few minutes, she peeked out of her bedroom and observed a male described as approximately 6 feet tall, slim build with a black ski mask leave the 2nd floor patio area. This patio door was likely left open as it was found open upon my arrival. I interviewed an additional roommate who told me she was at the residence during the commotion. She said she was on the 2nd floor in the living room watching Vampire Diaries with the other roommate, and an unidentified person and Kaylee came home from a night out at the Corner Club bar. The roommate said she also believed Madison and Kaylee went to the Grub Wandering Kitchen truck that was commonly located in the 300 block of South Main Street. She said she and Madison let Madison's dog out, Murphy, sometime between 2 and 2:30 a.m. She said during this time she observed no suspicious activity. She returned inside while Madison was still outside with Murphy. She said she went to bed around 2:30 a.m. and Madison came into her bedroom sometime after 2:30 to ask if she knew where Murphy was. She told Madison no, and Madison left. The roommate said she woke up in her bedroom, which was located on the first floor, to a sound she described as a firecracker and a flash. She said she initially thought the sound was a prank. According to her phone log she showed me, she called Xana at 4:21 a.m., Ethan at 4:22 a.m., Maddie at 4:22 a.m., and Madison again at 4:30 a.m., then Kaylee at 4:31 a.m. She never received an answer on each phone call. She went back to sleep and woke up around 11:56 a.m. when 911 was called. Initially, I was told Kaylee was likely located on the second floor bedroom with Ethan. After comparing the first roommate's initial statement with other investigation officers' observations, it appeared to actually be Xana that was located on the floor of that bedroom, and Kaylee was one of the other females located in the third floor room. I also observed the following vehicles in the gravel parking lot that was immediately north of the 1122 building. A silver 2015 Land Rover Range Rover with Washington license plates, a blue 2010 Honda Civic with Arizona license plates, a white 2014 Chevy Cruze with Idaho license plates, a red 2011 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited with Washington license plates, and a black 2017 Ford Explorer with Washington license plates. I was originally assigned to identify all of the people in the area. However, I was reassigned by Sergeant Gunderson to begin the search warrant application process. I provided the above information in the search warrant application. At approximately 4:28 p.m., I returned to 1122 King Road to assist with securing the southwest patio entrance. I took responsibility from Officer Warner in documenting who entered and exited the residence. I provided this documentation on a notepad and maintained the log until I was relieved by Officer Morris at approximately 5:50 p.m. He goes on to list who went in and out of the residence. The next is a general narrative of Sergeant Gunderson. On November 13th, 2022, at approximately 11:56, Moscow Police Department officers responded to an unconscious call. The caller, later identified as a roommate, reported her roommate was passed out, not conscious, and not breathing. As I was preparing to leave the station, Officer Nunez, who was already on scene, advised of a likely homicide and asked for additional units. While I was en route, Officer Nunez advised he had located 2 additional victims. The victims were later identified as Kaylee, Ethan, Xana, and Madison. Moscow EMS was asked to stage and not respond to the scene unless requested. Upon arrival, I saw, this is redacted, crouching near the entrance to 1122 King Road. Redacted was in obvious emotional distress. I entered through the first floor door, which faces north towards the parking lot. I announced myself as a Moscow police officer and heard Officer Nunez and Warner respond from upstairs. When I got to the second floor, I saw a female covered in blood in the bedroom on the northwest side of the second floor. I believed this female to be Xana. I looked inside the bedroom Xana was laying, and it was obvious an intense struggle had occurred. Xana was obviously deceased. There was blood smeared on various items in the room and all over the floor. There was blood cast off on the walls in various places, including above Xana's body. Xana was on her back on the floor in the center of the room with her head towards the west. Xana was in her underwear and a long-sleeved gray shirt. Both her shirt and underwear were covered in blood. Her face and body was covered in dried blood. I could see what appeared to be defensive knife wounds on Xana's hands. There was a deep gash on Xana's left hand between her pointer finger and thumb. A partially covered male was on the bed and obviously deceased. I believed this male to be Ethan. The midsection of Ethan's body was covered with a blanket. His head wasn't visible and appeared to be between the bed and the south wall. There was some blood cast off and what appeared to be arterial blood spray above where Ethan's head was located. I proceeded upstairs to the third floor where I met Officer Nunez and Warner. They advised the residence was clear of any additional people. There was a dog belonging to Kaylee in the third floor west bedroom, which has access to a third floor deck. The deck has no exterior access to the ground level. I asked Corporal Snider to cordon off the area and Officer Nunez to start identifying the subjects that were on scene when he arrived. I asked Officer Warner to start a crime scene log at the front entrance. Once Officer Smith arrived on scene, I asked him to stand guard at the kitchen sliding door, which I later learned was ajar upon our arrival. On the third floor, I went into the southeast bedroom, where Officers Nunez and Warner advised they found two females, who I believe to be Kaylee and Madison. Both were obviously deceased. I observed Kaylee lying on the north side of the bed and Madison lying on the south side of the bed with their heads towards the east. Kaylee and Madison were covered by a pink blanket which was covered in blood. There was a large pool of blood near Kaylee's midsection. There was blood cast off on the east and north walls above Kaylee and Madison. Madison appeared to be laying up against Kaylee. Madison had what appeared to be wounds to her forearm and hands. She had a gash under her right eye, which appeared to go from the corner of her eye to her nose. Kaylee was unrecognizable as her facial structure was extremely damaged. I asked Officer Nunez to close the door to the bedroom so the dog did not try to disturb the scene. Other than that action, Moscow Police Department patrol officers left the scene as it was found. I was later confirmed with Officer Nunez that no EMS personnel entered prior to my arrival. I contacted Captain Barrett and advised him of the situation. He said he would activate detectives and get more resources en route. Once Detective Sergeant Lawrence arrived on scene, he requested one of the responding patrol officers begin writing a search warrant, which was assigned to Officer Nunez. Corporal Snider was assigned to take initial photographs of the scene, while Officer Smith and Warner remained as security at both entrances. I collected the dog from the third floor and took it outside. Deputy Olson transported the dog to the Humane Society on my behalf. Officer Nunez was interviewing a large group of individuals which were associated with the residents. Officer Nunez asked that I finish getting contact information for the individuals. He lists all the names that he added. Once those individuals' names were collected, they responded to the Moscow Police Department to be interviewed by detectives. I assisted with a canvass of the area and was assigned to the southernmost apartments at Queen Road. I contacted the residents following apartments who claimed they didn't hear anything. There's some redactions here. I remained associated with the call and assisted with scene security until approximately 6:00 p.m. Next is the supplemental narrative of Corbin Smith. He responded at 12 noon. When I arrived, I entered the residence and went to the second floor. I observed a female wearing a sweatshirt and underwear laying in the middle of the bedroom floor covered in blood. I observed deep lacerations, an indication of defensive wounds on the female's hands. The female was surrounded by blood on the floor. I observed a male laying on the bed. The male appeared to have suffered from stab wounds and a laceration to the neck. He was covered in blood and the bedding around him was soaked in blood. In a third bedroom, I observed two females laying in bed which appeared to have been stabbed to death. The female laying on the left half of the bed as I looked at it from the doorway was unrecognizable. Her face was completely disfigured and was stabbed several times. I was unable to comprehend exactly what I was looking at while trying to discern the nature of the injuries. The second female on the right half of the bed had multiple stab wounds. The comforter was soaked in blood and a pool of blood was still present. I was assigned to hold security at the rear slider door. This was the alleged point of entry of the suspect. I observed very large footprints in the snow. I used a tape measure and the shoe size measured approximately 13.5 to 14 inches. The footsteps went to and from the rear slider door. I observed a trail of footsteps headed away from the slider, then turn right around a stump in the backyard and lead towards the front of the house. I observed a small set of prints on the window to the east of the slider. The screen to this window appeared damaged and was laying on the ground. I located smudged fingerprints on the glass slider door. There was a discarded black backpack in the backyard. I photographed these items and attached them to the case. I maintained rear security until I was relieved by Officer Warner. The only person to enter from this point was Captain Lanier at about 3:27 p.m. And the last one we're going to read today is from Corporal Ryan Snider. At about 12 p.m., I responded to 1122 King Road for the report of an unresponsive subject. Upon my arrival, I noticed there were several college-age subjects out front of the address. I was directed to use police caution tape to block off the crime scene. As I was working around the residence, I noticed the back door was open and there were footprints in the snow coming from the back door on the back porch. Officer Smith took photos of these prints with a measuring tape. He watched the backyard area to make sure no one else came into the area. I noticed there were a few footprints that left towards the west of the backyard. This portion of the backyard is connected to two other residences, 1118 King Road and 1126 King Road, both directly to the west. The footprints appear to lead west towards King Road between the residences, but I was unable to see where the footprints went after the yards connected due to the amount of rock landscaping. I was also unable to discern how old these prints were. There had not been recent snowfall. With Sergeant Gunderson, I entered the residence to continue taking photos of the scene. I entered through the bottom floor of the main door on the north side. I took photos of the rooms and living areas of the residence. The photos were downloaded onto a CD and booked into evidence. The photos were labeled in this report with a brief description of each photo. As I was down the road of the address near the King Road and Queen Road intersection, I was approached by a college-aged male who identified himself as, and is redacted. He stated his, is redacted, lived upstairs at 1122 King Road and they share a dog that was there currently. He did not appear to have obvious wounds on his hands, as I would assume the subject probably would. Officer Nunez was interviewing subjects about the situation. I asked if he would wait inside Officer Nunez's police car so we could talk with him, and he agreed to. I informed Sergeant Gunderson of the circumstance involving this male. He later responded to the police department to be interviewed and then picked up the dog from the Moscow Humane Society shelter. I continued to canvass the area and speak with neighbors. They stated they did not hear or see anything relevant. I spoke with subjects at another residence on King Road. One resident stated she was walking home from the corner club about 3 a.m. and thought she could hear music or some type of noise, but she couldn't give any clarifying information more than that due to her level of intoxication that night. I spoke with subjects at another residence on King Road. The majority of them stated they were out drinking at the corner club and got a ride back to their place about 1:30 a.m. and went to sleep around 2. They didn't hear anything out of the ordinary. Another King Road resident stated about 4 a.m. he heard a barking dog coming from the east of his residence. He believed it was the dog at 1122 King Road. That was the only dog in the area. He stated the dog sounded like it was outside and was barking for about 45 minutes until he believed someone must have let it inside at around 4:45 when it stopped. He stated he had a female with him in bed at the time who also heard the dog barking at this time. I spoke with the residents at its redacted King Road. They informed me they had a camera facing the west of the address they believed captures a portion of the road. They first provided me with the SIM card out of the camera. However, they could not get it to work and neither could I. They gave me the username and password to the camera. I informed Detective Mowry of the information and they gave me permission to access the camera footage and record the necessary surveillance video. I cleared the scene at about 5:49 p.m. And then he lists all of the different photos he took, which are very lengthy. So we're going to end it there. It's just so devastating to read all of this. This is the first time we've actually read what was found when officers arrived on scene after that 911 call. I'm actually surprised that Moscow released these today, but again, it's over. He has been sentenced, and this case is pretty much closed. And I'm sure Moscow did not want to deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of requests for documents, so they're releasing them on their page. There's a lot of these documents from what I can see. I'm going to go through tomorrow very thoroughly and make sure we're not repeating a lot of the same information. We don't need to say over and over the condition of the bodies. This episode pretty much covered all that. And there's really just no words for any of it. So senseless. That is it for this episode. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.